In this story, you'll hear about a man who lost everything, his wife, his home, and his peace, only to find unexpected fortune, a mysterious woman, and a chance at a completely new life. I had been married to Marcy since high school, and we had two lovely twin daughters, Cindy and Sandy. Cindy and Sandy attended Columbia University to study international banking, and we both owned Volvos. Marcy had her own credit cards and cell phone, and I never denied her anything, cheated on her, or verbally or physically abused her. She never expressed her displeasure or voiced any complaints about anything. There was no way I could have prepared myself for this, and I never realized anything was wrong. Perhaps that was the issue I wasn't observing. I know how a divorce works, Marcy, but could you explain why she kind of passed out in the kitchen chair? It was clear that she didn't want to talk about the reasons, so I hoped I would just sign the papers and let her go. Tell me, Marcy, what the hell did I do wrong? Gary, you were the ideal husband. Sometimes I hoped you'd make a mistake, and I'd have an excuse to leave, but you never did. You were excellent at raising the children and helping them get through college. You always gave me everything I wanted, even if I was a bit crazy at times. You bought me a lovely house, and my parents adore you. You never think I did anything wrong because you didn't. She looked 45, with a lovely complexion, light brown hair that glistened in the sun, and a body that was perfectly toned and tanned. On weekdays, she looked like a Land's End girl, but when she needed to be glamorous, Marcy was as flawless as she claimed. I'm sorry, but it doesn't make sense. There must be a reason, Gary. I'm trying to do this in a way that doesn't offend you or make me look bad. Why don't we just end it there? No, Gary, I found someone else. He's a real estate developer, and he has a gorgeous apartment with a view of the river and a gorgeous black Mercedes. He's wealthy and adores me. You were and are a grocery store employee. I'm not disparaging your work, because you have always looked after us and made enough money to keep the family comfortable, but you will always be a grocery clerk. I wanted more than that, and I couldn't imagine you would do that for me. You were always content with your job, and I didn't see you trying to get better. It was painful. I was the grocery department manager, and she still considered me a clerk. When I had the chance to move out of town and further my career, I declined the chance to keep my family together. And now look how I was rewarded, which was painful but not worth mentioning. Does this rich, attractive man, Clayton Manning, have a name? He is the president of Keystone Development Company. How long have you known him? How long have you slept with him? Marcy sat up straight in the chair, her eyes darting around the room, and finally she looked me in the face. Yes, I was trying to avoid the topic, but since you insisted on it, yes, you were still married. Yes, I was still married. I cheated on you. Hyung, are you happy? Afterward, I sat for a while before reaching over and taking the as I was leaving. The room, Marcy screamed. Hell no, that's not the reason he wasn't better than you, just different. I was so preoccupied with my work and hobbies that I didn't even notice Marcy slowly moving her belongings out of the house by the time she handed me the divorce papers, which were signed in 3 places, initialed twice, and handed them to her, across the table. I regret to disappoint you, but I think he's better than you, and personal belongings into Clayton's apartment. She had been considerate enough to leave all of the wedding and family photos so I could enjoy them while she was away. When I returned home, she had left a power of attorney to sell the house and car on the kitchen table, and I spent the rest of the night getting rid of the beer that was in the refrigerator. By that time, I realized that the job was done. There was no going back, and I didn't want Marcy leaving. Would be gone the following morning, so I called work and took 3 months of overdue vacation. They kept bugging me to take time off, so there was no issue, because I had plenty of vacation and sick leave. I quickly called the schoolgirls and gave them a brief explanation that we were splitting up, but I wouldn't give them any more details. They wanted to call Marcy, but I didn't have her new number. I had 3 months to gather myself and make a decision, so I disconnected my landline and switched to a cell phone. My high school friend Terry Davis, who is now a real estate broker, agreed to sell the house without a listing at a low price and with a quick settlement. I also canceled all of my credit cards, opened new bank accounts, and cashed in my life insurance policies. Finally, it was time to organize the house. I went around the house and gathered everything that might possibly belong to my wife. There was enough stuff to fill 3 trash cans. I went to the closet next to the house, packed the girls' personal belongings into boxes, and spent 3 hours going through family photos. I put all of the girls' pictures in a box for them, and all of Marcy's pictures ended up in the trash can. It was dumb, I know, but I didn't care. The main issue was that I didn't know what I would do after 3 months, so I kept working or found something else. I had 2 hobbies. I collected coins, mostly cents with an Indian head on them. My second passion was geocaching, which allowed me to get outside and get some exercise. Marcy hated geocaching because of the ticks, poison ivy, and walking, but I didn't see how I could make a living doing any of these things. When I wasn't busy with my hobbies, I spent time with the Wall Street Journal, which Cindy and Sandy gave me a subscription to every year at Christmas. I didn't have any interest in stocks and bonds, but I read everything about it. Farm commodities. I was more knowledgeable about sugar, wheat, and corn than most market analysts, but it was only a hobby, and I had no money invested in any of it. I had spent weeks researching Keystone Development and Clayton Manning and Terry. Davis was able to learn more about Clayton and his current project than I could. He double-checked some of the information with a friend of his who works at the local commercial bank, and I was eager to see what he came up with. I had a few yard sales and unloaded a ton of stuff, and I left enough furniture in the house that would be good to show potential buyers. Marcy and Clayton's picture was published in the Sunday paper's society section, and they were at a political rally drinking wine with local figures. A few more weeks went by, and Terry made me an offer on the house. Heard from Marcy, the girls called every week, but I hadn't heard from their mother either. Hayes Mountain was one of the best places in the area for hiking and GOC cakes, but I found all the GOC cakes there. The house was not very high compared to the appraisal, but they wanted to close the deal in 60 days, which would be ideal. He had an interesting biography of Clayton and wanted to talk about it, so we scheduled a lunch meeting. In addition to the GPS, I would need to bring a metal detector because it's difficult to find a piece of rebar in the woods, and I needed all the assistance I could get. These landmarks, which are used by government surveyors and real estate developers to determine property boundaries, normally take the form of metal rods driven into concrete. Finding landmarks is an interesting side game for serious geocachers. I decided that today I would manage to find all 3 landmarks on the mountain. It was embarrassing to think that this lovely estate would likely be demolished in a short while to make way for construction, but Mountain was part of the Madison Land Trust. It was close to 2,000 acres, but they were always looking to add subdivisions and industrial parks, which took up the majority of the empty land. The trust had to rely on donations to survive, so next to the trust's parking lot was an orchard and a farmhouse with a big for sale sign. I couldn't help but smile as I saw the elderly man approaching me. He was wearing overalls, but instead of a straw hat, he was wearing a John Deere base cap. He said, "Well, if I had $1 million, I'd gladly take it from you." We both laughed when he said, "Well, I have people interested, but try to hang on as long as possible. Why?" I was hoping the land trust would buy it, but they don't seem to have the money they want to leave the fruit trees in their natural state, which is okay. The Velas who want to plant everything don't like it, but I think it will be a great addition to what we already have. How can a land trust compete with the big companies? I've given them a better deal. It's even worth $1 million in the listing, but I'll give it to the trust for $600,000. The problem is that they don't seem to be able to raise that amount right now, and if they can't do it in 90 days, I'll have to take away the option from that disgusting real estate developer, whose son of a Khan calls me every week, and I'm getting, it's a good deal for me, but I don't want him to get it. He has the $1 million under lock and key, so he'll be safe. The problem is that he needs to get all 6 properties for the deal to go through, which is why he's willing to pay more than the place is worth. If you don't sell him the option, he's going to lose his ass. If you don't sell him the land in the next 6 months for $1 million, since the land trust is unable to raise the funds, it appears that Keystone has a sure shot. However, if he does not receive that lot, he will lose everything, including the money he paid for the options on the other 5 lots, which is likely close to $1 million. His supporters will abandon him if I had the money. Yes, they all say that we laughed again, and I went for my walk. I thought it was interesting that he mentioned Keystone because the landmarks were within a mile of one another, which is twice as close as the crow flies on the mountain. When I finally located the last marker, which was much older and more difficult to locate, I discovered a small brick monument with a bronze plaque attached to it, buried under years of leaves and debris. I took a picture of it to post with a magazine, and that's when my life changed. The metal detector was still on, and as I moved away from the marker, it began beeping. It was faint, but it was there. I put on my headset and started looking around about 10 feet south. Of the landmark, I finally aimed it at the target and carefully started probing. You don't typically find metal in the middle of the woods. After 5 minutes, I had a small iron box wrapped in a piece of canvas that had been heavily oiled. The box itself was sturdy, with a lock stock of heavy bronze, but it still did its job. The government or some historical agency should usually receive fines of this kind on public lands because they are considered treasures. However, for some reason, that option didn't make sense. As I packed the box in my bag and left for home, today I couldn't help but wonder what was inside my little box. Gold coins were the first thing that came to mind. Perhaps it contained important documents from the Civil War earlier. The only limit on the possibilities was the size of the container. I cleared the kitchen table, took out the Foster, and started to examine my discovery. I didn't want to break the lock, but I couldn't figure out how to open it any other way, and I wasn't sure if the mechanism inside the lock was still. I determined that the lock would have to be sacrificed, and my bolt cutter quickly completed the task. Inside the box was another piece of oiled canvas, and when I carefully unwrapped it, I discovered 12 pennies. These weren't your typical everyday pennies. They were old large cents, and the oldest was 1793. Despite their age, you could easily read the date on each one, and surprisingly, there wasn't any green corrosion, which is common on old copper coins. I never got into collecting large cents. I thought I could get more for my money by purchasing newer cents with Indian heads, but I did have a book my grandfather left me called Quirks of Penny. It discussed the various kinds and varieties of large cent stamps, but I didn't own any of them, so I found it boring. It had been collecting dust on a shelf for almost 30 years, but tonight it would be put to good use. I sat up until dawn with my grandfather's book and a magnifying glass, and my scanner captured stunning high-resolution pictures of every coin, including the cracks and scratches. I slept until noon, and when I called work to check on things, they informed me that Phil Williams, one of the company executives, had inquired about me. They didn't know anything more, and I had other worries, so I didn't pursue it further. It would require a trip to the bank to obtain a safe deposit box, and after spending a few hours online, I discovered that my pennies were worth several $1 million. It wasn't about age, but rather their condition and the varieties of while. Eating breakfast at IHOP, I noticed another photo in the paper of Marcy and Clayton at the opening of a new art gallery. She was wearing a black cocktail dress and holding a glass of wine or champagne, and they were both grinning at the camera. After receiving the safe, I called John Smurd and asked him to hold the money. I now understood why drug dealers had to go to such lengths to launder money. For a few days, he seemed content with the call. I went to the Land Trust office and asked them how I could donate to the organization. They were very willing to help. We were 4 weeks away from the final divorce, and for some reason, I felt that deadline was crucial. I spent the rest of the day looking into coin dealers and auction houses, but I wasn't looking for ads. Instead, I was looking for lawsuits. Eventually, I decided on Towers and Burns in New York City. They had a strong financial position and appear capable of handling contentious sales with little difficulty or publicity. I scheduled a meeting with them for Monday afternoon and called the girls to ask them to allow me to have lunch with them on Monday morning. The Towers and Burns office's facade was a chic showroom with lots of light and glass, display cases filled with a standard assortment of collectibles, and walls adorned with other numismatic paraphernalia. I gave my last name and was led back to a much less the building's attractive part. "Welcome to New York, Mr. Simmons. I know you have some interesting cops to show us, but is this your first time in the city?" I sat down in the straight-backed chair across from James Towers, and although his picture was in the advertisement, he looked about 10 years older. Thank you. I've been here before, but never on business, because my daughters attend Columbia University. I'm not questioning your coin knowledge, but don't you have someone on your staff that specializes in early copper coins? I believe their presence would be beneficial, and I'm not overly sensitive, so I think it would be a good idea as well. He leaned over to his desk, and Marie had Cookson enter my office. Maurice Cookson had written multiple guides to large and half-cents, and I was pleased with his accessibility. Mr. Cookson also appeared older than his photos, which I suppose no one likes to see. I have 12 special coins for sale, and I hope to sell 4 of them today, keeping the 5th for your consideration. The remaining 7, I'll say, if today goes well, I'll also offer them to you later. I know it seems unbelievable, but I believe 6 of the coins will be classified as conditional census status. Mr. Kukon will decide whether I'm close or not, because census condition cents don't often come up for sale. I was hoping you would be curious about the origin of those coins, as my grandfather left them to me when he passed away. I don't mean to offend Mr. Simmons, but this story is unbelievable. I spread 4 pictures on the table. The obverse and reverse of one of the coins I was offering today were shown in each of them. They were about 5 times the normal size and were very clear. James and Maurice stared at each photo for a few minutes before James finally asked, "What did you come with for these 4? A quick glance at the results of recent auctions led me to believe that it could fetch about $1.3 million for it, but your figure is not out of the question. Maurice truly knew his pennies. I only want $800,000 for the lot, but it must be handled with special care." James smiled and leaned back in his chair. "I think we can handle it. How special are you talking about?" "I had a letter from the Land Trust explaining how to donate land. I gave it to Miss Towers, along with an advertisement for John SMD's orchard. I want you to buy this piece of land and donate it to the Madison Land Trust. The price is $600,000. You'll get a very nice tax deduction and become humanitarians. Give us a moment, please." James and Morse retreated to the other end of the room after a few minutes. When Maurice left, James came back to the table and asked, "Do you have any coins with you?" He said, "Yes, I do have a 5th coin that I would like to keep with you." Mr. Cookson then came back to the table with a purple Crown Royal bag, and this time he said, "We are willing to honor your terms on the first part of the deal and hope you can honor ours on the second part." He then dumped the purple packet on the desktop, and it turned out to contain nearly 100 different coins, mostly gold but also some silver. The collection's retail price at $300,000 for a variety of reasons we won't go into, but you won't have any issues. "I know you've sold coins on eBay before, isn't that right?" I just nodded, and these coins, which were inherited from your grandfather, should sell easily and benefit both of us. I gave it some thought and decided to give the 4 pennies to Mr. Towers, and we all shook hands. Mr. Simmons then told us about this 5th. I held the picture in my hand and looked at Mr. Cookson, who is named the highest-rated 1793 strawberry you've ever seen. I've never seen one, but I believe the highest score is fair 12. I gave this picture an 8, but I'm not an expert, and when I said that, he wasn't looking at the picture. Instead, he was looking at my face. Cookson was grinning widely, and I could see dollar signs in Towers' eyes. "How much is the best offer, mister? If you can figure out how to pay me, would you like a cup of coffee?" Simmons, of course, said that black would be fine. They both left the room with pictures, and a few minutes later, a young woman brought me a cup of coffee. "Mr. Towers will be with you in a few minutes. He has some phone calls to make. Will you be okay?" I nodded, and we began the coffee. 30 minutes later, Towers returned with a stunning woman who had dark eyes, raven hair, and what looked like Middle Eastern features. I estimated that she was no older than 30, and she was well-dressed and powerful. I assumed I knew her, but I couldn't recall where. "Hi, my name is Letitia Rothberg. Do you have a passport?" "Mr. Simmons." Her voice was deep, but still feminine. "Yes, good. We'll be going to JFK soon to set up a new offshore bank account for you. Do you have anything to give to Mr. Towers?" I gave James a 1793 strawberry, and he looked like a little boy at Christmas. "Thank you," he said as he left the room. We never agreed on a price, but I still had 7 coins that Towers wanted, and he agreed to hold the little bag of coins until I, returning an hour later, Letitia and I were already on a plane to the Cayman Islands. She didn't say much, and when we got to the airport, a number of photographers wanted to take her picture. She looked irritated, but she was smiling sweetly. I didn't know why. It was my first-class flight, and it went by too fast. A bright yellow mini SUV was waiting for us at the terminal, and my hostess didn't think twice about pulling her skirt up to her hips as she slid into the driver's seat, much to my pride. She caught me stealing glances at her tanned legs and seemed amused by my discomfort. 20 minutes later, we parked on the lower level of a mid-sized condominium building. Letitia Rothberg owned the entire building, but she used the top floor as her personal apartment. "Could I get you anything, Mr. Simmons? A beer would be nice." Her exit from the room was as good as her foot flash in the terminal. I don't usually swoon over young women, but Letitia Rothberg was unique. We went out on a tiny balcony with a view of the ocean. It was lovely outside, but the wind was too strong for me. I suppose she was trying to impress me with the grandeur of the place, but I was more interested in the new bank account I was receiving. "You don't talk much, Mr. Simmons, but I'm sure you have some questions you'd like answered." It seemed odd to me that a woman of her status and class would drink beer from a bottle. I could picture her sipping martinis or champagne, but not beer. If she continued to do so, Although I believe it would be best to wait, I suppose you could. Explain to me why we had to come here in order to open a bank account. It's a straightforward, safe and secure way to get money, and I believe it will work out well for you. It's only 1 coin, yes, but you have 7 more. I apologize, but that still seems excessive, and we returned to the house in safety from the wind. Can you accept that I brought you here to be my sex slave for a few days? I must admit that the unexpected remark made me laugh. I knew it was absurd, but I still found it funny. She was funny, attractive, and wealthy. What more could a man ask for? If only I were 10 years younger, I wouldn't be making fun of an elderly man. We both laughed lightly at the situation, so let's go get some fresh lobsters for dinner. We finished our long necks and left the restaurant. The food was delicious, but I didn't particularly enjoy the wine the hostess had chosen. I tried to be polite, but it didn't work. "What's wrong with the wine, Mr. Simmons?" I apologize, it was an involuntary kind of reflex. Action when I was 18. Got wasted on cheap white wine like a dog. I've never been this miserable before or ever since. Whenever I smell or taste white wine, I throw up. It's a good wine, but don't worry about it. 5 minutes later, we had 2 cold long necks. Strangely enough, there wasn't much conversation during the meal, and at the end we each had a fruit sorbet and drank coffee. "Tell me about yourself. Are you married? Do you have kids? What do you do for a living?" We spend the entire night together, and I'm curious as to what brought us together. I have a master's degree from Columbia University, and I'm one of their guest lecturers. I got to meet both of my daughters this morning. We had lunch together, and they hate it when I make them skip class. "You must have gotten married early, because you have 2 college-age girls, because that sounds like a phrase a guy could use. I thought this was okay. She left me for a rich wheeler dealer, who I believe builds shopping malls or business complexes, and he has a fancy car and a large apartment. She told me she's decided to switch. The divorce will be final in about 4 weeks, which is a stupid reason to leave a good marriage. I guess everything was fine until she met this guy, and I guess she was never happy with my choice of work opportunities to further my career. But she refused to move forward. I wasn't excited about it, but she decided it was any neary to save the marriage, so now I feel like nothing. What do you do?" There was an awkward pause, and she noticed my discomfort and responded accordingly. "It's not important. We can discuss it later." "No, it's okay. I'm not ashamed of what I do. It's just that working as a supermarket grocery manager isn't the kind of job that impresses. Ladies, it doesn't bother my daughters, but my wife frequently. Purposefully forgot to bring it up in conversation, and I could tell it was bothering her. Do you like what you do?" "Yes, and I'm good at it." The waiter brought more coffee and cleared the table. "Miss Simmons, I know you've only known me for a short while, but I think first impressions are crucial. In a nutshell, what is your first impression of me? The question put me in an awkward position because if I answered honestly, I might push her away, and if I tried to make her feel better, I was certain her head was cocked slightly, and her eyes were looking up at me. I noticed a small smirk, hoping for candor. I'm sorry, but we were having such a pleasant evening and I didn't want to ruin it. Do you really have such a bad opinion of me? I don't want you to resent me. Maybe that's why your wife left you for another man. Had you not always tried to please her, your marriage would have been stronger. Miss Rothberg, I must admit that there was some truth to it. I think you are sly and manipulative. You use your charm and beauty to get what you want. You're used to getting your way, and I feel like you're a bit of a spoiled brat who plays with men but is afraid of commitment. From the look of things, you know how to make money and spend it wisely. If you weren't so preoccupied with proving that you're as good as any man, you'd probably make a good mother. I felt awkward after saying that, but she infuriated me. For a few minutes, we just sat there staring at each other, asking ourselves, do you really think I'd be a good mother? Then on the short drive back to the condo, everything was pleasant again. I knew she had heard everything I said, but she seemed to accept it without question. She wanted the truth, so I gave it to her. The fact that she wasn't upset made me feel better about being honest with her, and my night as Letitia Rothberg's sex slave ended up being a little dull. Bedrooms, which is okay because I wasn't expecting anything anyway. The following morning I woke up first and discovered a copy of the Wall Street Journal and a breakfast of fruit danishes and hot coffee waiting for me. The wind had subsided, and I enjoyed lounging on the balcony with a view of the Caribbean. I could get used to this. Letitia joined me about 20 minutes later and took a piece of the paper in jest, and we sat in silence, reading and drinking coffee as though we had been doing this for years. I had only known this woman for less than 24 hours. I'm afraid my phone doesn't work here, and I really want to call my daughter Letitia. She held out her cell phone to me as my guest Cindy and its daddy. Where are you? Is everything okay? My cell phone says London and I'm in the Cayman and everything is fine. I just thought I should let you know that I'm staying with a friend because I didn't go straight home, so I had to use her phone. Last night, the TV showed a picture of you boarding an airplane with Letitia Rothberg. What the hell that woman is a barracuda who eats men for breakfast. Letitia was carrying a tray of breakfast from the balcony as she passed by, and I couldn't resist. This is my daughter Cindy, who is in New York, and she warned me to be careful because you're a barracuda. Sure enough, Cindy heard me say this to Letitia and let out a loud groan over the phone. I don't understand your concern, Dad. Letitia was already waiting for me to give her the phone before I could respond to any of her questions. It's Letitia, your father told me about you and your sister. I'll be in New York tomorrow and would like to have lunch with you two. Where can I pick you up? Of course, there was no way I could have known the other side of this conversation. Who is this, Professor? Problem, I'll pick you up from the classroom at 11. All right, I'll say goodbye. Letitia returned my cell phone to me. Your daughter said goodbye. I'll have lunch with them tomorrow. I swear to be amiable despite their opinion that I'm a fish. She giggled and wiggled her ass and went to her room. An hour later, we were at the Federal Reserve Bank of the Cayman Islands. With the help of my hostess, I opened my first offshore bank account, and 20 minutes later I noticed that my new account had been credited with $4 million from Towers, and after dinner, she asked a friend to take us to feed manta rays. I asked her why she worked for a company like Towers and Burns, and she told me that she owned 60% of the business. What else can you tell me about yourself? It seems like you're a big player on the GL financial scene, and I'm shocked to admit that I don't know anything about you. I was born and raised in London. My mother is Turkish, and my father is Asian, and I have an MBA from Columbia University. I'm not married, but since I haven't been in a serious relationship for more than 3 years and have been engaged twice, I've learned not to trust men who express interest in me. You could say that I'm cynical, but I feel like most of them want something from me, but have nothing to offer in return, which is unfortunate. I was hoping to get a ride back to the condo. Does that mean you don't trust me? You need to take this seriously, you big jerk. I apologize if I came across as insensitive. I didn't mean to be. I guess it's difficult for me to relate to your problem. I'll try to be better. Letitia initially seemed obligated to accompany me, but I convinced her to have fun and let me blend in with the tree where I felt comfortable. She did her best, but for the majority of the night she kept checking on me. I spent the evening trying to remain even more unnoticed than I was wearing the street clothes I had worn in New York. We had a party to go to, and the evening ended at a cocktail party at a major hotel. Everyone knew her and treated her like a celebrity, talking to a couple of Hispanic gentlemen cattle ranchers from Argentina. The conversation began with soccer and then turned to fishing. At least it was in English, and I guess it was to my advantage when one of them commented on how gorgeous Letitia looked without realizing that I was her chaperone for the evening. I felt a little flattered. My contribution to the conversation was mainly smiles and nods, and I didn't know enough about any of the subjects to add anything significant until Ramon Duarte brought up the subject. I got the impression that he was fairly wealthy and was a little perplexed as to how he managed to do it. Normally I take pride in maintaining a poker face, but I guess I failed at it this time, Mr. Simmons. Based on the expression on your face, I can tell that you disagree with me regarding investing in winter wheat. I was caught, and I was supposed to remain invisible and inaudible my invisibility. I apologize to Ramon, but I'm not an investor, and I don't understand the complexities of this case. I called him by his first name because I felt uncomfortable speaking to him in a formal manner. But I have a feeling you have an opinion on the matter, so I'm going to bother you until you share it with us. I was stuck trying to smile a little, but I need a fresh drink. For the next hour, two gentlemen listened carefully, as an Alabama green grower explained that the excellent winter wheat crop in Alberta and Saskatchewan would more than compensate. I was at a loss for words when Letitia appeared. Ramon and his friend were flattered that she joined our small group and was sincere. The Canadian Grain Board has leased all of the silos in North and South Dakota to store the surplus, and they have even reserved rail cars of grain for short-term storage. Winter wheat futures will start to decline in a week, and will keep declining until the market stabilizes, forcing both Canada and the States to unload wheat overseas. Letitia and I said our goodbyes, and I went to the commuter train terminal to fly back to Huntsville after the divorce and the sale of the house went through. I was shocked when she took my hand and led me away. What the hell was that, Gary? We were just talking about food and groceries. She gave me a small smile as we left for the condo the following morning. A group of photographers were waiting to capture her arrival in New York. A courier from Towers and Burns gave me a small package containing the coins I had left behind. As planned, I received multiple messages from Phil Williams at the main office asking me to call him. They also asked me to think about moving the company's headquarters to New York, which I did. John Smurd also left a message saying he wanted to meet for lunch. I tucked myself away in my locker at work and wished shifters luck. The paper featured a photo of Clayton and Marcy at a local politician's barbecue. They looked like the ideal couple. It took me an entire day to scan and identify every coin in the bag from New York. It took a full day to post the coin ads, prepare all the envelopes and blank stickers for shipping, and then transfer the money to my PayPal account and my new offshore bank. With 3 weeks to go, I decided to put them on eBay as soon as possible. As long as they weren't caught by any scumbags, everything should be fine. I had the weekend to unwind, and my Friday lunch with John Smurd was interesting. JN was thrilled that I had gotten Clayton involved, but was disappointed that I had gotten nothing out of the deal. Before he left, he gave me the deeds to 5 acres of land on the outskirts of town. He and his wife were leaving for Florida, and he wanted to organize the house before he left. Shortly after John and I said our goodbyes, my cell phone rang, and Cindy and Sandy were arriving in Nashville in 2 hours. I had plenty of time to pick them up, and since the girls were on a tight budget and the airfare to Nashville was half that of Huntsville, I had no trouble getting there and picking them up Cindy. I was excited to discuss LSH. The lecture hall was hosting an advanced corporate finance course for more than 300 students when the professor paused to introduce Letitia to the class. She seemed to be in control of the room and spoke to the class for 10 minutes before announcing that she needed 2 students for lunch at the Westin Hotel. We were shocked when she called our names. So you liked her. How in the hell did you meet her? She said she was looking for a sex slave, and I was, in fact, Cindy and I agree that she was interested in more than just friendship. I'm 10 years older than her and a few dollars poorer, so I'm sorry, girls, but she's completely out of my league, Daddy. She can have any man she wants, so why don't you think about it and give us a clue from our point of view? Sandy, her first. Joyce tapped me on the shoulder. This isn't funny, be serious. Okay, what did you talk about during lunch? Sandy chuckled lightly. But Letitia Rothberg doesn't know you the way we do, and it seems like your mother didn't know me either. For a few minutes, everything was quiet, and my comment about the mother sounded like a punch. I didn't mean to turn my daughters against their mother, and I regret saying what I did. I'm sorry, girls, that didn't sound right. Your mother is a wonderful woman, and I have no right to tell you that you shouldn't worry about it, Dad. We understand, more than you realize. Then, just as we crossed the Alabama state line, S's cell phone buzzed. Hello, pause. We got there about an hour ago, and everything is fine. PA, you're kidding. Pause, that sounds great. I'll tell him thanks for the call. In the rearview mirror, I saw Sandy giving Cindy the thumbs up. What was that? Sandy was leaning over the front seat of the car, and guess what? Daddy, Letitia is coming to Huntsville on Tuesday morning. She said you have to pay her for the night, and she expects breakfast in bed. I was flattered to hear the news, but I felt pressured by Letitia, and now my daughters. I hoped that I was capable of handling more than just this one. The girls' weekend went well. They spent Saturday afternoon with their mother, but were unable to meet Clayton. I asked them not to bring up Leish, and we arranged everything they wanted to leave at the house. By the time they left, we had everything arranged, and I paid in advance to store the items until they finished school. As we drove back to Nashville, they made me promise to try to be friendly with Letitia. When I asked what they meant, Cindy replied, "Just don't aggravate her." They seemed excited about my move to town, but I still didn't understand what Letitia needed from an elderly man who didn't even own an Armani suit. When I got home, it was time to unwind with a beer. The Sunday paper didn't have any pictures of Marcy and Clayton this week, but it did have a brief article about Keystone Development's difficulties funding a local project. Winter wheat futures had dropped in value for the first time ever, which was intriguing. I called Terry Davis and invited him over. It wasn't lunch, but I thought we could talk. Clayton Manning's past was, to put it mildly, mixed. Over the past few years, he had either been extremely wealthy or broke. He had spent a lot of time moving to get ahead of creditors and friends who had lent him money, and when his new project started to fail, the people and investors who had supported him were vanishing. I don't remember beer ever tasting so good. On Monday morning, things turned out better than anyone could have predicted, and the coins I put up for auction sold much better than I had anticipated. Cookson estimated the coin's worth around "I will be a free man" in a little over 2 weeks. 3 months ago, this would have seemed like a disaster, but today I was looking forward to it because the people who bought the house had negotiated financing and were ready to close the deal. I found it funny that Marcy felt so at ease with Clayton that she didn't need any of our joint possessions. I wondered if she realized how shaky her future was. At 3 o'clock, I had a meeting with the people who bought the house. They had no problem with me staying in the house for another week because it was convenient for both of us. The following morning, I got a call before I had even had coffee from an unidentified individual formally informing me that Miss Rothberg would be arriving at 10:45 a.m. I arrived 30 minutes early on Delta Flight 724, which made me a little anxious, but a number of paparazzi had learned of her arrival and were waiting outside the terminal. I did my best to blend in, parking my car in the short-term lot because I didn't want to draw too much attention. Instead of waiting for me to pick her up, she chose to walk behind the car. Of course, the photographers remembered my license plate number, and the secret was revealed. I'm not used to such a fuss, but Letitia didn't seem the least bit. She apologized to me for it, and on the way home I couldn't help but think that when she was getting off the plane, I wanted to kiss her dumb old man. I was embarrassed by how sparse the house had become over the previous few months. I had gotten rid of everything except necessities, for which the new owner had agreed to assume responsibility. After I left, my guests seemed amused by my attempts to apologize, and since there was nothing to eat in the house, we made a quick stop at the nearby Taco Bell, her choice. "Letitia, I'm glad you're here, but I don't understand why I assumed you'd be returning to work. This is business silly. I know you're moving to New York next week, and you need a place to stay." I have a spare bedroom, and I'm here to help you pack a truck. I'll be here tomorrow morning to move anything you can't fit in the car, just no furniture. How did you know I was moving? It's a bunch of bullshit, but that's what I've always wanted to say. Are you plotting against my daughters? I tried to smile naively at that, but it was difficult for an elderly man to show up. Her offer was unexpected, but I couldn't think of a reason not to accept it. Okay, let's get some boxes so we can pack. I thought she would have felt more at ease sitting in a bank or boardroom, but she seemed to enjoy having a conversation with me. When I got settled in New York, she promised to take me to the store to get some appropriate clothes. But when we were done, there were more boxes than could fit in my car, not enough for a moving van. I hoped she had ordered a small truck, so I put aside my laptop and small inkjet printer to attend an eBay auction. We were just getting ready for dinner when a new surprise awaited us. A delivery van was parked in front of the house. She had more stuff out than we had packed, and she refused to listen to my pleas for mercy. The driver in a smart uniform got out of the cab with a clipboard, and Letitia and I watched. Are you Gary Simmons? Yes, I have a delivery for you. Where do you want it? What the hell is this car? It's from Mr. Ramon Duarte. Is there a room in the garage where Marcy's Volvo used to be? I nodded and pointed in that direction. Letitia put her hand to her mouth and giggled. I'm not sure, but I believe she was amused by my confusion. 5 minutes later, I was staring at a shiny orange sports car. The courier proudly said, "This is a 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider Super Leggera model. Isn't it the most beautiful thing you've ever seen?" Letitia couldn't stop laughing. She wasn't loud or anything, but she was clearly having fun. I signed the shipping form for the fancy uniform to go home, not knowing what I would do with my gift, but knowing I wouldn't be taking it with me. New York get in the Volvo Little Miss Funny Pants, and my guest was still grinning as I pulled out of the driveway. I ordered 2 Fosters and a whole rack of ribs. Could you tell me what's going on with the car? Ramon stocked up on winter wheat, and everyone thought he was crazy. When the price started to drop, he started doubling contracts, and in less than a week, he made over $40 million. He was happy with the money, but he was even more thrilled with the comments he received about his wise move. Well done, Ramon. I hope he didn't mention me, but he wanted to pay his respects to you, but only with your permission. He thanked me for providing you. When the ribs arrived, I didn't realize he was going to ask for your address. I watched as Letitia dipped some of them in Basco before getting down to business. God, I love that girl. I'm going to send it back in the morning, don't you? That's what I thought. Don't worry about it. Ramon won't take offense. He would have been happy to give you the money, but he probably assumed you wouldn't accept it, so you would feel more obligated to keep it. When I was in Tabasco, I felt good and didn't want to go home right away. I would have done anything to spend the night in bed with this gorgeous young vixen. I envied the suave, debonair, lovable guys who could get any girl in the world into bed in 5 minutes. All I could hope for was a good night kiss. And we couldn't talk all night. Eventually I had to go home, but the following morning was fantastic, and all of my worries were for nothing. Letitia took me by the hand and led me to the bedroom because I was a true gentleman. I'm sorry, but in the given situation it's the best I can do. He's as good as I could have hoped for, and after a few giggles and rearrangings we went back to the kitchen. Breakfast in bed sounds neater than it is, Letitia. After making sure her needs were met first, I was rewarded with the best night of sex in my secluded life. I don't want to ruin the mood, but I'm really curious as to why you picked me. I don't have much to say. Gary, I was impressed by the deal you made with James in New York. I just sold some coins, not that it's silly, but I found your proposed agreement to purchase trust land intriguing. Do you consider me a philanthropist? No. I see you as a cunning bastard who took advantage of a unique situation to mess with his finances. I've been burned numerous times by slick dearboy lovers, and I won't fall into that trap again. Hey, I've been burned by slick dearboy lovers, and I'm attracted to you because I'm not a trickster or deech. Wife's lover, of course, made me smile. I was astounded by her intelligence and how well she concealed it. No, Gary, that was brilliant. I was impressed and wanted to learn more about you. You couldn't possibly know why I was in New York. I knew what you did, but I didn't find out until days later. Of course, I'm not a fool, and I must admit that the boost in self-esteem was refreshing. Unfortunately, Letitia had to leave via an early morning flight back to New York, and I hated to see her go. The Lamborghini dealer was unable to come and pick up the car until the following day, but it was okay because I wasn't going to drive it. The movers arrived with a small truck and took my belongings to go to New York, and Terry Davis called to inform me that Keystone Development was having serious financial difficulties. It appeared that Clayton had lost nearly all of its supporters inexplicably, and almost immediately after, there were rumors that some people were picking up markers that Clayton hadn't received. That evening I was going to take my old Volvo, but I noticed it was gone. What's that orange car in the garage? Things were starting to get interesting. I'm sorry, Marcy. When you said you didn't want your old Volvo, I sold it back to the dealer, who might still have it if you want to check it out. I had never heard Marcy use that term before, but the orange car was a gift. I'm leaving in a few days, but I'll help you in any way I can. In any case, I can't imagine myself driving something like that. The sticker on the window read $225,000. Who would give you a gift like that? Your new girlfriend? No, it was an Argentinian cattle rancher I helped a few weeks ago. It was just a gesture of gratitude. What else can I do for you? There was a pause in the conversation, and I realized Marcy wanted to say something but wasn't sure how to say it. Would you like something to drink? I have beer and diet sodas, but I can't stay long. How did you even get here? I saw a car, Gary. You mentioned that you were leaving in a few days. Is it okay if I stay in the house for a while? The house is sold. We closed the deal yesterday and the new owners will move in this weekend. They're letting me stay until Friday, but that's all? What's wrong with the apartment by the river? She didn't respond to that question. There was a brief silence, and then she asked what happened to the money you received for the house. Things were getting really interesting, and I was beginning to enjoy that the conversation was moving in the right direction. It's all gone. You made it clear that you didn't want the money I used to arrange a new apartment for my move. Are you moving to New York? I got a promotion and a big raise, so I should be there on Monday. I wasn't going to tell Marcy that I was going to live with Letitia or that I had a bank account in Cayman. You never told me what happened to the apartment. It was just that the lease expired and the owner didn't want to renew it. Where are you now? We're staying at the Holiday Inn until Clayton picks up a new place, and I now understand why she wanted to move into our old house. Marcy appeared a little confused and she wanted to ask for help, but she wasn't sure how to approach it. There was a lull in the conversation. Is there anything else I can do for you? Could you give me a ride to the holiday? The first half of the trip went well. I know you have a girlfriend, but tell me about her. She's more of a business partner than a friend. What kind of business are you not doing? Business? You're right. I'm just a grocery store clerk. I can't fool you. Marcy was silent, staring out the window, and I heard her whisper to herself, "Bastard." This was the perfect opportunity to let her know how offended I was by the pictures in the papers, but instead I just smiled to myself. I felt bad for a moment, but it went by quickly. I dropped her off at the motel entrance and she left without turning around or saying goodbye, which I hate to say, but their copy of the Huntsville paper was delivered free to each room at the Holiday Inn. Marcy can read it at breakfast. I was confident Clayton would tell her who Letitia was. I emptied the safety deposit box at the bank. I felt satisfied that the week was going well. On Thursday morning, I unexpectedly received the final divorce papers. They were early, but who am I to complain? On the front page, there was a picture of Letitia Rothberg arriving at the airport. Your sincere friend was holding her hand. 7 pennies will come in handy soon. I assumed Letitia would inquire about them while she was here, but she never once brought up the topic. Our conversations were solely social, and if she was interested in me for work-related reasons, she never brought it up. I set a buy-it-now price for all of the coins in the auction, and more than half of them were sold at that price. I then spent the remainder of the day packing up the coins that were sold and getting them ready to be shipped to the post office. If all PayPal purchases were made, the auction had to close by Friday at noon. Most of the money from my PayPal account was transferred to my Cayman account as I was leaving, and I also left a small amount on PayPal in case I saw anything. The trip north would take about 12 hours without any delays, and Letitia was in the apartment, and promised to make a home-cooked dinner for my family. Payments went through, and all coins would be mailed the same day. So, any unscrupulous buyers will have to wait until Monday early Saturday morning. When Cindy called, it appeared that Clayton Manning had left town, leaving Marcy without a car, a place to live, money, and a large hotel bill. I asked Cindy what she thought I should do, and she laughed and smiled. When I arrived, I wondered who would cook, but it was good to know that I was still man enough to win the heart of such a beautiful woman, and I had no doubt that I could fulfill all her expectations. Thank you for listening. What would you have done in Gary's place? Do you think Letitia truly cared for him, or was it all just business? And did Marcy deserve a second chance after everything that happened? If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. It really means a lot.